Welcome to DEIJ Hot Takes. My name is Daryl Sinclair, and this is the podcast where we discover the bold and transformative ideas shaping diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice work today. In this episode, we are joined by Kwame Sarfo-Mensah, who is the founder of Identity Talk Consulting and the author of the fantastic Learning to Relearn. Kwame, thank you so much for joining us today. Could you please share with us what your DEIJ hot take is that guides your work?
Daryl, thank you for having me. And my hot take for today is unlearning and relearning should be a key approach for every DEIJ consultant.
Thank you. So, yes, the idea of unlearning so that we can change our habits. This is one of the more direct hot takes of what we should be doing. Could you please take us through what this unlearning and relearning means in the context of DEIJ work? Why you feel this is a hot take and how you make this a reality in the work you do?
I believe that this is a hot take because when you are going through the process of unlearning, you're uncovering truths that are very uncomfortable to know. And I know we love to focus on white people going through this, but honestly, everybody has to go through this because in the end, we all have biases that we have to address. It's part of human nature. So just using my own journey as an example, when I moved abroad in 2019, after spending majority of my life in the United States, I had to come to grips with the many privileges I've had being in the United States. The fact that I could speak fluent English, the fact that I had education, 2 degrees, the fact that my wife works within international development and I have the ability to travel to all these different countries. These are all privileges that I've been afforded as a result of where I come from. So when you come into these different spaces, you have to be aware of your positionality as it pertains to folks who are within the host country, so local citizens and residents, and then be aware of how they may perceive you, even if you don't perceive yourself in that manner. So even though I believe that I'm not the richest person in the world, because of the fact that I come from America, because of the fact that I have a lot of education, and the fact that I have this accent, which does equate to access, people view me as someone who is rich. So the funny thing is, when I'm in the States, I'm a lower middle class citizen who is a Black man. So I've always been in that space. But then when you move to this new space, now they're viewing me in the same way that they view folks who are not the same complexion as me, specifically white people. I'm closer to them than I am to the people who are in these countries. So coming to that revelation made me want to explore these other parts of my identity and the identities of others. So I went through this process of podcasting where I started to interview different educators who came from different countries, who spoke multiple languages, who came from different ethnicities. Some range in different abilities. Some came with intellectual disabilities, some with physical disabilities. And I'm just learning about how they've had to navigate life in the different spaces that they're in. And at that moment, it wasn't about me. So now we're talking about decentering. It was about me learning about them. And because I had a genuine interest in learning about them, just like you do, Daryl, when you're doing these conversations, that's what allowed me to gain more knowledge and capacity about different people from other parts of the globe, but it also encouraged the other folks who I'm interviewing to share more and more about who they are, and at times even be vulnerable in sharing their stories because it's a safe and brave space for them to do that. So when we're talking about this process of unlearning, it requires us to question the information that's presented to us. We do live in a society where the default is white dominant culture.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you're in the United States, whether you're in the UK or other parts of the globe, we are in a culture where the values, the practices, the traditions that we follow are dictated by this very culture, even though it's not named as such all the time. And we didn't grow up knowing what that was. That's what we believe because that's what was around us. But then as you get older and you start to learn more about yourself, in my case, through therapy,
Mm-hmm.
with, my wife, and even with my own life coaching that I've had to do for myself to deal with different traumas I've had growing up being first generation Ghanaian American, you realize the complexities of identity and just the intersectionalities of who you are. And by doing that personal investigation and making sense of the fact that, okay, even though I am Black and I grew up with learning support plan at school, I also have these privileges as well. So I didn't always experience racism or ableism.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm also someone who has privilege. I'm a straight man. I'm a cis hetero Black male. So because I'm cisgender and heterosexual, that means that I'm able to navigate spaces that my queer friends or other friends from the LGBTQIA community, they're not able to do that.
And
So
I'm finding this really, really interesting. I'm loving your sharing.
yeah,
Thank you for being vulnerable there. I always like to affirm I'm a massive advocate for therapy, especially within Black communities, where I
yes.
think it has been shied away from at many times culturally across the world. So using the broad umbrella of Blackness. What I'm hearing from you when you're talking about this unlearning, it seems that as you have been exposed to intentionally to other people living their lives in different ways, it's kind of unlearning your own identity, recognizing that there's elements to your identity which you may have thought were true, but you've had to unlearn it because you've seen yourself through the eyes of others. So you've been like, oh, I'm Black, they would be labeled Black, but we're actually very different. And how they see me is not how I experience the US. I need to unlearn this and then learn from them. I love the conversations you were talking about. I need to learn from them to broaden my understanding and how I can engage with these people. All these different people that you're engaging with and meeting with and learning with. Now, I would say, thank you for pointing this out. And the decentering element of what you're speaking about, what does it look like? Or, you've given a beautiful example of some of your experiences of this. What are some actions that you would recommend for others? What would it look like for one of our listeners to begin this journey of decentering ourselves? Because that can be hard to do, to unlearn how we see ourselves. So what's a specific action that you did to make that work, or you recommend for people you work with?
Sure. I think there are many ways you can decenter yourself. I think for one is having an interest in learning about other people's cultures and where they come from. And just having conversations with people who don't come from the same communities as you.
Mm-hmm.
Because just from the conversations alone, you can learn a lot about who people are. So that's one. But also recognizing the privileges that you have. When you're decentering yourself, you're taking a whole audit personally of not only the ways in which you've been discriminated against, the ways in which you've been marginalized, but also you're showing empathy by recognizing that there are other humans around you who have dealt with even more severe struggles, even more severe trials and tribulations than you've experienced. So being able to have that vantage point and identify that, even though I might be going through my struggles, there are people who are going through even worse struggles than I've gone through. And I need to take some time to recognize the circumstances that have led to said struggles. So those are just a couple of things. But I think when you decenter yourself and you recognize that there are privileges that allow you to be an advocate for those who are in more marginalized situations, it allows you to have a better sense of how you need to be in these different spaces you're in.
I'm really enjoying listening to you because dialogue has been such a central theme with everyone I've spoken to, and the way that you're describing these intentional dialogues, the consideration of the other to enable us, see them as people and recognize that people are going through things. Just out of a respect for your time, I'm gonna take it to the wrap up point, but I'm really hoping people are inspired by what you've said and do reach out. For yourself, what would be the key takeaway from this? If there was one thing you wanted people, when this video ends, to take away or to begin thinking about, what's some key takeaways? It could be a resource. Definitely going to direct people to your book, so tell us about that. And any perhaps reflective questions they might be able to use to begin this journey of decentering and unlearning.
I think, Daryl, the one thing that I've been thinking about lately, especially in the past conferences I've been in, is the fact that people are very much scared of language. Language scares people from getting into action because there's a sense of, if I don't know what this is, I can't act appropriately. But what I want to tell people is not about you knowing what these terms are. It's you embodying the spirit of these terms. So you may be engaged in identity forming work in your respective context, but don't even know what the actual term is that you're doing. That's totally fine. We're more concerned about how well you treat other humans. And that's what DEIJ is about. How are you treating other humans with dignity and respect? The goal is belonging. We hear this term belonging, but it's about creating a space where people can be their full selves, regardless of where they are, and they don't need to leave any parts of their identities at the door. And that's the word that I want to leave, is making sure that you're doing that, but also you are interrogating your biases. You are giving yourself grace when you're making these mistakes, because when you're trying to learn about identities, mistakes are going to be made, but it's all about how you respond to said mistakes. Are you doing it in a way that's restorative, that's going to bring back peace into the community, or are you getting defensive? We want to focus on the restorative piece of that, because in the end, it's about being better as humans. And then I will say the last thing is find your community. There are so many people, just like the people who have been previous guests on this platform, who know so much about equity, who know so much about what it means to treat other humans with dignity. Lean on those people, have those conversations with people so you can build your own capacity in how to do that at a higher level where you are.
Thank you so much. I'm blown away. I've so thoroughly enjoyed this. Thank you for sharing everything with us today. For the people listening, I'll place links in the description where you can connect with Kwame. You can read his book, and you can look at some of the work he's doing and hopefully collaborate with him, exploring his ideas and his work. Thank you for listening or watching, and I will see you on our next episode of DEIJ Hot Takes. Thank you so much, Kwame.
Thank you, Daryl.